that everyone's under busy schedules, so I rarely post on Facebook, but I couldn't resist last night because how many places in the country have an earthquake and the threat of a tornado in the same evening? So I appreciate your coming out here on a rainy, I don't know, world coming to an end type day. This is the first of the season of Faculty and Alumni Showcase series where we are really proud to showcase the accomplishments of some of our faculty and some of our alumni, and also hope to offer you a service of giving some CLE credit, particularly at this time of year. Today I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Kevin Matthews. I will say Kevin and his classmate, who is now a state representative, were in the very first class that I ever taught here at TU, and I remember exactly where they sat because they sort of were the peanut gallery back there, the back of the room, right-hand side. Kevin received his undergraduate degree at Cornell in 1994, his law degree from TU in 1998. He's been extremely active with the TU Law School Alumni Association. He's been the co-chair of our diversity committee. He also participates in our mentoring program. He presents a lot of professional development seminars, and I will say that Dean Bridges and I teach a class to all first-year students on the legal profession and professionalism, and Kevin is a yearly speaker about mentoring and networking. He has this phrase, which I love: everyone needs to have their personal board of directors. And I think that that's really true, and I think about that a lot. He is currently at the Williams Companies, but prior to that he's been active in politics and also worked at Legal Aid. In 2009, he was voted one of the 40 under 40 in Oklahoma. And I thought the description in that magazine where he was selected is really interesting and encapsulates a lot about Kevin. It says, while most people are bogged down with one career, 38-year-old Kevin Matthews proudly excels in his dual careers as attorney and athlete. At his day job, Matthews provides professional legal advice, counsel, guidance, and advocacy on behalf of the Williams Companies, his employer, and just also happens to be a Fortune 500 company. And he's also in the midst of a 5+ year cycling career. What started out as a passion and dedication has turned into professional bicycle racing, and Matthews has grown into a Power Bar sponsored athlete. During his downtime, he trains select breeds of canines and is active in volunteering. He also supports the pro bono panel for Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma. So clearly, Kevin Matthews, very successful professionally, but has also really lives a balanced sort of work outside of work life. And today he's going to talk to you about the balance between outside counsel and inside counsel. So I turn it over to Kevin.
First of all, I want to ask you just to please continue eating, and I want to welcome everyone for coming out today. And in particular, there's some groups that I'd like to thank and welcome, and that's the faculty and administration at the University of Tulsa College of Law. As you know from hearing Dean Levitt, I was a student here, and I'd like to add, if I could, that I believe I got an A in your class, although you referred to me as part of the peanut gallery. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record. I'd also like to welcome members of the legal profession that I see present. I've got some coworkers that have come in. I've even got a former boss that's come in today, and so this is a really special moment for me here to have all of you here. And I'd also like to, if I could, just welcome a couple of members of the Tulsa community. My parents, Gary and Sandy Matthews, are here today, and so as you can imagine, that's a special moment for me, and I want to thank you all also. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'd also like to take a moment, if I could, to give a special thanks to Dean Bridges, who's the head of the Office of Professional Development. And one of the reasons I've I've mentioned Dean Bridges is that a lot of you are probably anticipating that we're going to have a discussion, which we will get to, just about the inside-outside council relationship with regards to an official capacity or how we utilize them to get work done. But I'm going to take a few minutes to try to acknowledge some of the outside counsel that I use and that I employ to help develop me as an attorney, that make my life easier, that make my job easier. And Dean Bridges in the Office of Professional Development, we have a great relationship, and I'm very thankful to her for helping me out in times when I need help with my development. So thank you, Dean Bridges. I appreciate that. I'd hoped that Professor Sellers, who teaches an advanced oil and gas class here, would be present today, but it seems for some reason he hasn't made it. I serve on the executive committee of the Tulsa County Bar Energy and Mineral Law section with Professor Sellers, and that's another relationship that I have, and I was going to give him the opportunity, and I'd like to go ahead and take it now and invite all of you. We have a Tulsa County Bar Energy and Mineral Law section meeting on November 16th, and one of the TU professors who I've heard speak before, Professor Wiseman, will be speaking at that event. So if any of you all have any interest, she's a great speaker and probably one of the more storied, I would say, writers in the country. So if you get that opportunity to attend, I think that that would be something for you to definitely benefit from. I'd also like, if I could, to take a moment to speak about a special relationship I have with a particular outside counsel who's present today. And I think it's important to note that this individual I have known now since I was yay high. And in 1996, in particular, on November 14th of 1996, this particular outside counsel wrote a recommendation letter for me. And I've got a caption from that letter here that I want to share with you all, and then I'll explain a little bit more. But just to put it in context, on November 14th of 1996, the #1 song in the country was No Diggity by Blackstreet. Vander Holyfield was the heavyweight champion of the world. Space Jam was the #1 movie at the box office with Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan. And a regular gallon of gasoline was right around $1.23 per gallon, depending on where you check. Anyway, this particular outside counsel wrote that you have presented the question of what I expect Kevin to be doing in 15 to 20 years. I anticipate that Kevin will be in a position of leadership in the public sector. I also expect that he will be, depending on his career path, either an elected official or a member of the state or federal judiciary. If Kevin, for some reason, does not elect to pursue a career of public service, he could do anything from directing news or sports operations at a national network to serving as a member of the administration or law faculty at a major university. So I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about Mr. Joel Wolgemuth, the author of that letter, and a little bit about how he's helped me with my development.
Kevin, you wrote that for me, though, didn't you?
as with all the other documents that you send out sometimes. But I just want to say that Joel has been instrumental not only in encouraging me to attend law school, but he helped oversee my education while I was in law school, and then today still serves in a capacity as an advisor, as a mentor, and has encouraged me to take on some of the mentoring duties that I've taken on. And so what I would encourage everyone to do, if you're a student here especially, is to find yourself not only a mentor, but like Dean Levitt said, a board of directors. And I would utilize them in every aspect of both your legal education and your career. So with that, I'm going to move on. I appreciate that, and at times I'm probably going to touch base with you here in the discussion about some of the things you've helped me with. I'm an inside counsel for Williams, all right? And I think one of the things that I wanted to start off with, and I think you have it in your packet, when you work as an in-house counsel, the nature of what you do is different. I mean, in that I'm an attorney, but first and foremost, I'm an inside counsel for Williams. And so part of that, and I've had some discussions with people as I was preparing, is you have to understand the corporate culture. You have to understand, and in this particular case, the core values and beliefs of Williams. And I've got a copy of this here. I send this out whenever I engage outside counsel, just to make sure they've got a copy of it, even if they've seen it, even if they're familiar with these 10 core values and beliefs. I want to make sure that I refresh their memory. I want to make sure they've got a copy, because the last thing we want is opposing counsel in a courtroom saying, well, Williams didn't adhere to these core values and beliefs. They didn't maintain their integrity. They're not protecting the community. So this is one of the things that I think is probably first and foremost in the mind as an inside counsel that I've got to adhere to and abide by. And it's hanging up, I'll let you know, on every floor and probably every conference room down here in the Williams Tower. And so if you get a chance, I want you to read through and just learn a little bit, if you can, about the core values and beliefs that guide Williams and some of the work I do as an inside counsel. I think the second important component of, beyond just the corporate culture, the second, and if I could just take a minute too also, and I was remiss, I want to, if I could, I want to welcome one of our esteemed members of the judiciary who's just shown up.
Nice. Yeah, couldn't wait. I told Kevin I just wanted to come so I can ask him why he spelled his name with 2 N's. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Judge.
Oh, thank you, Mama. Okay, we can ask her. Say, I'm going to get my answer today. I'm so excited.
Good deal. Now, if I can for a moment, too, I think beyond just the core values and beliefs, I think it's important, too, to understand a little bit about how Williams is structured, right? If you understand the nature of something, you know what its capabilities are. So let me just give you, if I can, a quick rundown here of Williams. This is a gas well. We've drilled approximately 8,000 of those gas wells since 2004. And from this gas well, you've got gathering lines, okay, that run out from the gas well. So you drill the well, you hook the gathering lines in. Then along these gathering lines, you'll have compressor stations, you'll have processing plants for natural gas liquids, things of that nature. And so you've got a flow of the gas running this way. This is a major transmission line, which then carries the gas into what a lot of people know as a city gate. Like here, for instance, in Tulsa. And then within Tulsa, you have Williams, all right? And when you get into the corporate structure of Williams, you'll see that up here you have a number of corporate services, and I apologize if I'm blocking you all on this side. You have a number of corporate services that support the corporate function. You may have tax, HR, you have legal. So all the in-house counsel are really corporate shared services, all right? So if you look a little further down into Williams, you've got 3 major business units. You've got E&P, which is exploration and production. You've got midstream, and you've got pipes. I'm currently assigned to this group right here. All right? And E&P, interestingly enough, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, we're in a number of places. All right? We're in Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, North Dakota, Pennsylvania. I've even recently handled a matter out in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's just a little bit of a breakdown, kind of the Williams structure. And you all in your packets, if you'll take a look, you'll see that you have an outline, and it's a brief outline that was actually put together from some materials that are on the ACC website, and the ACC is the Association of Corporate Counsel. And as an in-house counsel, there are about 16 major areas that I might run into at any time, at any moment, and I'm expected to at least have enough familiarity with those 16 areas to recognize if I have a need to use outside counsel. And if you look through the list here, I think that except for probably intellectual property, I feel pretty comfortable with about the 15. And there's going to be an example that I'm going to give you here of where I've used outside counsel to help me out in an intellectual property way or an intellectual property manner that I thought was rather unique and hopefully will be entertaining to you to see how they handled it. And Mike Gibbons from Crow Dunlevy, who's one of our partner firms, he's also here. He's one of the people that helped me out with this particular issue, and I'll make it a point to get into that as we move forward. Our legal department, as you can see from the competencies that you have there, the head of our legal department, you have our general counsel, which is Jim Bender, and then underneath our general counsel, you have AGCs. which are the assistant general counsel, and they make up what is the legal leadership team. And we have one for E&P, we have another one for pipes, we have another one for midstream. The corporate secretary position also is an AGC. And the AGCs then have direct reports, which are senior counsel. And they're usually people that have been inside counsel for about 10 years. And then under the senior counsel, you have senior attorneys. And then under senior attorneys, you have attorneys. That's the position that I currently hold. I'm kind of the low guy in the hierarchy. What I think is important with regards to the hierarchy and the outside counsel relationship is that while I'm in this position, I'm still accountable to one of my AGCs for everything that an outside counsel does. Every document that gets filed, every deadline that has to be met, ultimately I'm responsible. So when I made the SIC, which is the staff in charge on the case, I'm responsible for everything from the budgeting to the final disposition of a case or a matter. When we're evaluated as inside counsel, and I think that some of these competencies that are listed in the packet or listed in the handout that you were given, we're evaluated on 21 various competencies. And I was actually having a discussion with one of our midstream HR business partners. The HR group will assign people to actually serve in a capacity as a business partner for the legal department. And in having this discussion, this particular HR business partner had said, well, Kevin, you know, I think you'd be great in a business development position, which is an attorney, and maybe if I was in a position of an outside counsel, I might see as a slight, I might see as an insult. But actually, I took that as a compliment, and here's why. If you look at some of them, and I'm just going to touch briefly on some of these competencies that are in your packet. The very first one, the very first competency that I'm judged upon is how I apply legal knowledge to what? The business. And that's why it's so important for me to have an understanding of the business. And I think that one of the things that a lot of times I run into are that outside counsel necessarily don't have the same understanding of a business, which they're not expected to, but I've got to try in some way to make sure that they do, because they're representing Williams. Now, if you look at the actual description of that particular competency, it says that, you know, applies legal knowledge to the business. He combines legal training, which I might add, I had great legal training here at the University of Tulsa. I actually got a public policy certificate, and it had a number of courses that were designed that I utilize on a regular basis, everything from environmental law to public policy, legislation. So I would encourage you, even though I don't know if it's necessarily going to be offered in the future, I think they're going to have an energy certificate that's going to predominate or dominate the particular curriculum here. If there are students that are available, I'd say get your certificate, get your energy law certificate, develop an area where you actually have some expertise. But nonetheless, if you keep pushing through some of these particulars, there's the second one that I'd like to focus on, or that I'd like to draw your attention to, and that's the customer focus. And the customer focus is the orientation to keep in close touch with the needs and perspective of internal and external customers, and the commitment to take actions that serve them and benefit the business. Once again, you have a competency that you're being evaluated on that really doesn't have a lot to do with your legal education, your legal skills, but you're back again on the business. The next one, which I find even more interesting, legal analysis and reasoning, involves the analytical ability to assemble information, evaluate it systematically using knowledge of the law and business, and assess and balance risks to arrive at conclusions based on good judgment. It says it requires anticipation of obstacles and formulation of solutions that are legally sound, practical to implement, and advantageous to the business. I'm probably getting the point here, and I know I'm beating it a little bit, but I'm going to continue just with two more if I could. It says problem solving and innovation. It says involves the ability to approach problems in a logical, organized manner and develops effective and innovative solutions that help to significantly enhance business performance. And finally, strategic perspective. The strategic perspective involves the ability to understand, formulate, and communicate sound business strategy. So, with that said, while I'm an inside counsel, and that's my position, you become a partner with the people that you represent. You're helping them fulfill their business objectives. And that's one of the things that I think is probably the most difficult concepts to get a hold of when you start working as an inside counsel. Now, if I can, when do you use outside counsel, right? Why do we need outside counsel? If you've got, I mean, if you think about our legal department, we have approximately 38 employees in the legal department. We've got over 5,000 employees spread out across the country. So clearly we don't have the staffing to handle every legal matter that comes through the legal department. I've talked to one of our senior counsels and tried to get some guidance as to, when do you employ senior counsel? And I've even had one of our young attorneys, Miss Jessie Pierre, who's here today, ask me that question, and I always try to, if I can, give an answer that's going to, I think, offer to her development. And in this particular instance, the senior counsel told me, you employ outside counsel when you can't do it. I reject the notion that there's anything I can't do. And so I tried to change that a little bit, and as I offer that advice to the younger attorneys, I'd say, well, if there are geographical challenges that you can't meet, then that'd be a time to use outside counsel. If for some reason your time constraints, because once again, time is money, money is time, and you're advising a business, so you're expected to have a quick turnaround, maybe a little bit quicker turnaround than you would have if you were in an outside counsel capacity. So if there's a geographical challenge, and the second component of it is, if I don't have the time, if I don't feel that I can get it turned around and fast enough, I will then seek outside counsel. Now if you look inside your packet, there's one printout of a website, and it's just an example where I needed help of outside counsel. And we had an individual who was perpetrating a fraud and using APCO, which is one of our international companies, APCO Oil and Gas. Basically, you see these scams where people say, if you'll send in $3,000, you can get a job. And a lot of people say, well, who could be so stupid to fall into that trap? And I'll tell you, in desperate times, and right now, there's a lot of people that see that as a great opportunity, especially when Williams is the company behind it. $3,000, they get a job. That's what they're thinking. So a lot of people fall prey to these traps. Well, we then consulted Crowe and Dunlevy, and I talked to Mike a little bit, and I'd already told Mike that I like to advise, when I get the opportunity, our CorpCom group. And our CorpCom group is now dealing with a number of challenges. Obviously, you've got what we call the new media. Some people call it social media. But under the new media, you're dealing with Facebook pages and YouTubes and bloggers and scams that take place. And so I contacted Mike and talked to him a little bit about a potential solution. Like, what do you think we can do? Can you map something out for me? And Mike, having the experience he has, he knows that I can't just run off to court and start spending money. He knows that there's a process that I have to go through, and that I'm going to be held accountable. So he gives me a number of options that I can employ, and then tells me if this particular option doesn't work, then you can try this particular option, and we walk through, and I was able to get the problem resolved before I got to the full-blown option of litigation, which an outside counsel always has to be cognizant of. When you engage in litigation, things can get out of control. And then I'm in a position where I have to go back possibly to my AGC or maybe our CorpCom group or someone within the company and try to explain what's taking place with that particular piece of litigation. What's going on? Why is the budget now starting to rise? I mean, there's these accountability issues that you have to deal with. And so that's just one particular example. I use outside counsel for a number of things. There's a bio that's located in your packet also. There's an attorney named Guy Smith. And Guy is an attorney with Leonard Street and Dunn. They're out of Minnesota. We recently did a Bakken acquisition. And as part of that acquisition, there are lakes, there are Indian tribal issues. Thank you. Appreciate that. And so...
Kevin, it's on your head.
Oh, there's right now.
On the side.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Yeah. There we go. Guy Smith is what I would say the quintessential outside counsel for an inside counsel, and that guy has been in my position. He worked as an in-house counsel. He worked for a Fortune 50 company, all right? He's worked in Washington, D.C. He understands the issues. He understands the accountability issues that I've raised, and quite simply, Guy is real easy to work with. I mean, Guy's a guy, for lack of a better statement, that I get along with, and so I depend on him for a number of issues. And I think if you get a chance, you can read through his biography, and you'll get some understanding as to, why it is somebody would want to use him. I've just noticed the presence of another mentor I have, and this is going to back me up a little bit, but I've just got to give a special thanks to Brian Gadarian in the back of the room. Brian has served in a capacity that's invaluable as an in-house counsel. And Brian has been my mentor from a business side. And right off the bat, Brian said, in order for you to be successful as an inside counsel, he says, you need to understand a couple of things. And one of the things that he told me, he says, in order to do our job, we need tools and equipment and services. And Brian said, you need to become intimately familiar with our procurement process in order to understand the job we have to do. So I then completed the procure-to-pay training program that we have. I worked with one of our procurement specialists for about 12 weeks and became intimately familiar with that procurement program. And it served me very well in my 3 years at Williams. And I want to thank you, Brian, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come today and also time out of your schedule to mentor me in my capacity as an in-house counsel for Williams. Whenever I go to employ an outside counsel, I let them know right up front, right off the bat, I say, when I see you as a strike force, for lack of a better term. And when I say that because I want them to understand that I don't want a protracted matter. I don't want a matter that's real costly. And in a lot of instances, there's a time window, a frame that I want things to actually come to an end in. I want it to be quick. I want it to be efficient. I want it to be over. Because if not, once again, I've got to go and start explaining issues to people above me. And so I told them I want a strike force, and then in this particular instance, like I talked about with Mike Gibbons, I want some graduated options as to how I'm going to resolve it. Now, I want to show you, if I can, something else that I recommend for our outside counsel. This is a copy, which I'd also say Brian recommended to me once. This is a copy of EMP Magazine. And EMP Magazine is a magazine that I use to be able to understand a little bit better about the industry trends, the digital oil field, the services that are provided, and where things are headed. If you're going to be an in-house counsel that supports EMP, this is a must-have. This is something that almost becomes your Bible to a certain extent. I keep one of these with me all the time, and I even have some friends that say, well, you're really wound tight. You're reading EMP Magazine. So I just think that that's an important component of it. And another thing that I think I'd like to, and I was hoping that he'd be here. When I was here, Professor Fry was my contracts professor. And I know we're talking a little bit about inside-outside counsel relationship, and one of my classmates is here, Mark McCullough, a member of the state legislature. He'll remember this very well. This is a book that Professor Fry assigned in our contracts class. Getting together, building relationships as we negotiate. And not only will it serve you well from an inside-outside counsel relationship standpoint, it'll serve you well in any relationship that you might have. And I rely on it, and there's a acronym on the back that's RUC-RIPA. It has about 6 key components, and I actually have some of these discussions with outside counsel when we first start off. And there are 3 of them in particular that I think are important to the relationship, and the first is understanding. You have to learn how the other side in the relationship sees things. Just as much as the outside counsel has to understand how I see things and how I deal with things, I need to understand how the outside counsel deals with things. I need to learn how they see things, with regards to billing. And Mike, you're real good about this with me, and that's, getting your people paid for the work that they've done and keeping them on target because they've got accountability also. So that's the first one. I think the first component there is understanding, knowing how each other sees things. Another one, which I think is important, is communication, but not in the sense of whether we're going to do email or whether we're going to use cell phones, and there are a number of ways that you communicate, and I think that's important to establish with outside counsel right up front. I always like to make my cell phone available if someone needs to get a hold of me on the weekend. I like to be able to get a hold of my outside counsel. I advise our safety group. So it's not uncommon for me to get a call on a Saturday or Sunday about a matter that's occurred or something that's developed, and I need to be available, and then I need my outside counsel sometimes to be available because we may have to respond by 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday. We might not have the luxury of waiting until the business opens or until the office opens. So I think that second component of communication is important. And then the third and final one that I'd like to touch on is reliability. Reliability, as with any relationship, I think that you have to be able to rely on the other party. You have to be able to depend on what they say. If they say they're going to do something, then they've got to do it, because if they don't, then what good are they? What good are they to you? You can be the most brilliant attorney on the planet, you can work for the biggest firm and have the most resources available, but if you're missing deadlines, if you're running over budget, right, if you're not meeting the assessment that you put forward, well, you're creating more problems probably than you're worth. And so I think that's a real big component. And it goes both ways. I have to be reliable too. I need outside counsel. Just this last Friday, I had a situation arise, and I was carrying into the Friday evening having to communicate and work with outside counsel because I know they had some deadlines they needed to meet, and I had made it clear that I was going to be reliable. I was going to meet those deadlines, and so I worked with them to get those things done. There's an article in your packet that I think is really important for you to just take a look at. I think it'll sum up. It's the model that I followed as an inside counsel with regards to establishing relationships and dealing with relationships. And it's an article about Mary Frances Edmonds, and I think this is a great thing. If you look at the article about the fourth paragraph down, it says Edmonds landed a promotion to, and the first part of that is vice president, a business title, and assistant general counsel. So here you have a situation where someone receives a promotion as an in-house counsel. Now they've got to what's a member of the legal leadership team, but they've now got a business title that comes before their attorney title. But anyway, taking from Mary's experience here, and you see she talks, and as you look through the article, she needed an ally. She uses language that's akin to, and I made that reference earlier, to a strike force, because a lot of times that's what it's likened to. So she said that she needed allies, and she went and actually met with a number of her outside counsel. I did the same thing in Denver. We use Holland & Hart for a lot of our Colorado matters, and I had amassed a number of matters and had counsel that were handling these matters in Colorado that I'd never met. I'd only talked to on the phone. I'd only seen the email. And so I took the time to go in, plant myself in a conference room, and have these counsel come in one at a time so we could meet, so we could get to know each other a little bit. Sometimes we'd go down and get coffee, or we might go get lunch. And those things are very important. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't all just a meet and greet. There was actually some legal matters. There were some legal matters that were discussed. And interestingly enough, this is where I circle back around to the relationship I have with one particular outside counsel that's here. You know, as we're moving forward with litigation, I'm able to say to one of the attorneys, you know, have you ever thought about this? Or maybe you should try this particular tactic. And he says, you know, that's a real interesting tactic. I've never tried that before. Something that he wouldn't expect from an inside counsel who doesn't regularly engage in litigation. But since I have relationships with outside counsel, and one of the better litigators in the state of Oklahoma, who was recently recognized in the top 10, I'm able to share some of that knowledge with my outside counsel that they can then employ in the matters that they're handling for me. So if you get a chance, I think that article that talks a little bit about Mary Frances and what she'd done there, I think that'll help you out with regards to understanding a little bit more about the establishment and maintenance of inside-outside relationships. It's also important to note in that particular article that Mary Frances took time to do helicopter safety training. She's been choppered out to a platform in the Gulf, right? Once again, we're back on kind of understanding the business component, even though she's an inside counsel, and then her including, when she can, outside counsel in some of those activities so they can gain some of that understanding. I've been out on drill site, I've been out on SIMOPS, I've been out on frac jobs, same type of thing, because I'm trying to gain that understanding, and I think that's important for an inside counsel and an outside counsel to have. We're getting close here to the time, and so as opposed to just continuing to go on, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put up a hand, and I'll try to answer any questions that you might have. No questions at this stage? All right, well, that's good. If you look in the back of the packet that's been handed out, there's a case assessment form. That I think is important, because when you're putting together this case assessment, you're working in a partnership with the outside counsel. I mean, they ultimately are going to provide you with the input that you need, but you're the one that's going to have to sign off on whatever they put in this case assessment. And you'll see in here, one of the key components of it is ADR strategy, alternative dispute resolution. If you can get a matter resolved without having to litigate it, and I've actually had the opportunity to travel to other states meet with outside counsel and attend mediations and be successful at those mediations. Well, those are outside counsel that are going to gain favor with the company, they're going to gain favor with the inside counsel, and that you're going to, I think, in the future, look to help resolve your matters, because they were able to get it done in a way that was cheaper, in a way that caused less commotion, so to speak, and less disturbance to the business process. You don't want to have some of your senior execs being deposed, having their schedules interrupted, responding to discovery requests, if there's a way that you can get the matter resolved. And as I've learned from some of my outside counsel associations, they all get resolved, whether it's before trial, during trial, or after trial. And so that's something that I think is important. If you look a little bit further into the kind of the handouts here, you've got a case assessment process instruction sheet. And 200 hours is pretty much the benchmark. It's going to go over 200 hours. And you're going to need a little bit more detailed assessment that lays out some of the things that you need to have. And then finally, I think that's pretty important here, obviously, is the budget and the staffing plan, which is another thing I like about Williams, and it kind of circles back around to the values and beliefs. On average, a corporation spends about $11.7 million a year on legal fees. And I think we're going to be right around, I talked with one of our AGCs today, and we're going to be right around 15 to 20 million for this year. And so there is a strong desire for outside counsel and firms to get some of those dollars, to get the corporate legal dollars. And one of the things I really like about Williams is that our general counsel has a commitment to diversity, and our legal department has a commitment to diversity. And if you're an outside firm and you want our legal dollars, then you need to have a commitment to diversity too. He makes that very clear. And there are certain staffing guidelines, which I won't get into too much here, but you have to meet, or at least attempt to meet, the spirit of some of those guidelines with regards to the staffing on the cases. And one of the first cases I hadn't fully read the outside counsel guidelines. I kind of had been thrust in and received an email from an outside counsel about a junior associate that was going to be working on one of my cases, and they said, well, is it okay for them to work on it? They were Native American, and I basically responded and said I didn't have a problem with that as long as they could do the work. I didn't really care. But what I later found out after I had an opportunity to read through the guidelines was that they were trying to meet the spirit of these particular staffing requirements. So that's something that I think is important for outside counsel to be aware of. If you're seeking out corporate dollars or corporate work, you need to understand not only the corporate culture, but some of the commitments that the culture has to diversifying its workforce to the community. And so, with that said, I mean, I'm going to probably end a little bit early if no one has any questions. I think that's about it in a nutshell. Yeah.
The training you have, does Williams have any particular training when you run into hostile, outspoken judges like Judge Keene? Or is there anything particular?
Yeah.
No.
Well, one of the things that's nice about working as an in-house counsel is the resources that are available to you, especially with regards to training. Every month, we have a monthly training seminar, and it can range from anything from, writing, obviously. We have writing seminars that we deal with. We can deal with communication, time management, client counsel. And every month we have one of these training modules, and a lot of times it's a member of the legal department that's putting on the training. I did one for the legal department on negotiation tactics, and a major component of that was the relationship. So I think Williams does a really good job of making sure that our attorneys, if they do, and I'll kind of touch on this in a minute, have to deal with situations that are a little bit abnormal, like a hostile judge. Williams also, I might add, has a pro bono legal aid partnership in which Williams provides legal services for overflow cases that legal aid services might have. We've partnered with Hall Estill, and through that program, hundreds of people get opportunities to be helped. Okay, people that otherwise probably wouldn't have access to the legal system. And I just want to say that I've had an opportunity on over half a dozen instances to appear in court this year in pro bono cases. And I think a lot of inside counsel, you don't deal with court. You don't go to court. You don't deal with litigation in the sense that you're actually involved in it. But that's given me the opportunity to show up in court, actually handle some cases, appear before some judges. And it's another component of being an inside counsel that I like, especially at Williams. I've got a matter sheet with all my matters on it, and there are 2 entries on that particular matter sheet that I really like. And one is you know, the pro bono work that you do. And I've even got a matter number for United Way. Williams has a real strong commitment to United Way. This year we donated over $2 million. And it's nice, even though you're in the legal department, you're still included and even expected to participate in these events and get out and be involved in helping the community. I, on the day of caring, had an opportunity to go to Resonance, one of the local centers here, and just do some mock interviews. And so while you're right in that we have special training opportunities to deal with certain things, we also have opportunities, I think, to become better lawyers through helping people and helping the community, and that's something else I like about being an inside counsel. So hopefully that answers the question. Dean Bridges.
Outside of diversity, what are some other characteristics that you look for when you're researching outside counsel, let's say in another jurisdiction where you don't have any contacts? And you know, Williams has a lot locally and probably regionally, but if you're looking at a jurisdiction and looking at Martindale Hubbell or their website, what strikes you as a strong outside counsel?
Right. Well, it's great that you asked that, because I actually had Mary Frances come to me once that had an issue that was in, I think, Alabama, and we didn't have anyone there, and she says, you know, I need someone to handle this matter for me. And we did go to the Martindale Hubbell site, and we started to evaluate the attorneys. But before we did, we looked to see, obviously, if they had a diversity program, a commitment to diversity that was going to be commensurate with our program. But then we start to look at, you know, what is the subject matter of the litigation that we have? Not only the experience, whether it be educational or litigation experience that individual has, but we also start to look at the firm. We look at bench strength in the event. That's one of the things I always like to know with outside counsel. Well, who's the backup in the event that the starter can't move forward? So I think there's an evaluation that takes place of both the starter and the backup in that particular case. So that's how we at least handle that particular one. So anyone else have any questions? Well, all right. I want to thank you all for coming out. I hope you've learned a little bit about Williams and the inside-outside counsel relationship today. And I would encourage all of you, if you get a chance, to go to our website and read a little bit more about our company. And thanks again for coming out.